Good evening. All good things come to those who wait, which is just as well because we, very rarely on time. Speaking of a man who's ruthlessly efficient usually, how are we, Danny?
Yeah, good, thanks, mate. Yeah, we're going to have to be a bit more on it, aren't we? Because we actually had, it's nice to see people in the chat like waiting this time, and which is great to see. So we'll be on it next time. We'll be a bit more efficient. We're both terrible people who are always late. Well, I'm terrible for that sort of thing. I'm late for everything.
It's difficult for us, Danny. Obviously, both being doctors, specialists in the world. Not the kind that can save your life. It's just very difficult. We're just highbrow professionals, and this is our charitable work, giving back to you. Not really. I got the impression, to be honest with you, the chat didn't need us tonight. They sounded like they were sorting each other's out, problems, how to use their assistant manager chip, if that still exists for people, all of these kind of things. But I will say a few hellos, and just a reminder as well. I've just seen a terrific comment in the chat from 1974. Do either of you work for British Rail back in the day? Timetables seem unimportant. Well, I'm tempted to go on a little political rant here, but I won't. But let's just say I would argue that they were probably better off back then than they are now. But that's another thing for another time, perhaps. First siren of the evening, everybody. Sorry for that. Yeah. But just to say hello to a whole bunch of people, because some people have been in there for 20 minutes. They've missed important dinner dates. They've not seen their kids' cricket match. Whatever it is. All of that kind of stuff. So we've got. I think I might have not seen him before, perhaps, but Joseph Robinson. He's a relative newbie to the Last Resort world. So good evening, Joseph. I hope you enjoy it as much as. Well, you should. So that's there. We got Matt Bugsby, who's a bit of a veteran in these parts as well. Heather. Evening, Heather, as well. Hopefully you've got a nice cool drink. It's pretty hot where I am anyway. I am 1974 and many others besides. Feel free to place any kind of chats and comments in terms of questions for later. I will sort of star them up, put them in, shelve them in this secret file that I have, and we'll come back to it a little bit later. So there's plenty of things to talk about. Before we do, Danny, how was last week? Do you actually remember that far back?
I do remember, but I'll double check because it was. I move on quickly from these things, but
good for you.
It ended well though, didn't it? Yeah, as it smug Eze owners. I think we both own Eze, don't we? What a man! What a guy!
Oh, beautiful man. Do you know what though? Very quickly on that, I don't mean to be one of those. Well, let's be honest, an asshole about this, but there was a lot of people kind of thought, it's incredibly unlucky. I can't believe it. I went, Sar over Eze. I'd be like, well, and a few of these people that I'd messaged about this or we'd had conversations, and we did talk about this before, and we both acknowledged that Eze is the better player, right? He's the best player. He's probably the best player, right? Well, actually, not even close. He's their best player, right? It's not a huge surprise. I mean, I've made many mistakes this season, but I acknowledge that he's a great player and he's a good idea. Maybe it's easier said than done, isn't it? But
yeah, I mean, the thing is with Eze, obviously we've been a bit fortunate. I'll acknowledge these guys.
Yeah. Except for that penalty. Yeah.
Except for the penalty. I mean,
and it's not goal.
Because Eze is a frustrating player. He's a form. He is streaky. He's totally a form player. He goes through loads. He goes through long spells of doing absolutely nothing. And personally, we've said this 1,000 times, so I'm not going to keep saying it because I sound like a complete arsehole. But the reason I didn't go Mateta was because I didn't like the minutes. So that's really why I went Eze. I didn't necessarily go for Eze because I thought Eze is amazing and he's going to get loads of points. But I did feel pretty solid about his kind of minutes. So we've been a bit I feel we've been a bit fortunate in the sense that it's not only played out in terms of minutes, but he has then caught form since kind of bringing him in. Although I say that, I can't remember because I did get him in early as well before the wild card. I remember. Do you remember when he came off for 1 point? There's dog barking in the background. Just don't know if it's loud. When I first brought him in, he got subbed after 59 minutes. Remember that period when he was getting subbed regularly, randomly at 60 minutes?
Yeah. You were unlucky there, really. Yeah.
And that was really annoying. So they're weird, Palace and Glasner, because a lot of them are like this. Apart from Sarr's, maybe a bit of an anomaly in that sense, but he's so kind of strict on minutes and readiness and fitness, because we've said about Mateta loads of times, it takes ages to get going. And when he does finally get going, he's unstoppable. He's a completely unstoppable beast. And then he tends to get loads of 90s. And when he isn't, when he's just slightly 10% off it, it obviously plays out on the pitch, and I don't know, it plays out in front of Glasner's eyes, and he's just ruthless. You're off. If he doesn't think you're 100% ready, you're off on 60 minutes. It's something to think about for next season, actually, because for a long time, Eze was not a reliable pick for minutes, and it's hard to pick up when that changes and why that changes. And I know, I think Baker's talked about on his pod, Eze often doing this, he thinks no coincidence, which I think is probably true as well. In a sense, I don't really like when he says that, Eze's sort of playing for a contract a bit. He was probably sulking a bit at the start of the season. He probably was sulking a bit, and he probably is playing for a contract a bit. But I don't think it's hard to say that with Eze, because he's a good boy. You know what I mean? I don't think he's someone who necessarily deliberately doesn't try or anything like that. And so maybe there's a bit of that. Maybe there's a bit of playing for the contract, but he has just happened to have picked up fitness, and so yeah. Yeah, the Palace boys have been great, but like you said, everyone's been. That's what I've not understood. Everyone's been saying, "Oh, it's really unlucky to have Sarr instead of Eze." But yeah, to me, I've not really seen many engaged managers. The choice has been Eze or Mateta for me, because I think Sarr's been a bit of a shoo-in for most people, because his minutes were nailed. His numbers have been good. He's cheap. So anyway, so Eze was absolute saviour. But last week it's brutal out there, because I have I was saying I'm looking at my team, and we've got Vardy. Everyone's got Vardy. I've got Munoz, got Rodgers, got Sarr, and got Eze, the 16-pointer, the only guy who really did any massive haul. And I'm on a 1-point green arrow. I've gone from 1.5k to 1.45k, and with 64 points. So it's brutal out there. It's so difficult to move.
I'll be honest with you. Actually, you probably remember this. At the end of the weekend and sort of early this week, you had to do some proper picking me up, didn't you? Because I was in my actually the phrase I have for it is I was in a blue wave. Where you have sort of a 24-hour type period where you just every time you think about FPL, you're just really kind of mentally taking myself back to that Saturday morning. No, it was lunchtime, wasn't it? And I just for viewers who have listened to us before, they'll know that I can be a bit of an arty wanker. And Mrs. Richie, just be careful about how I say things, booked a play on Saturday lunchtime. And so I knew that I was going to be stowed away in some dubious public toilet or something like that. It wasn't as bad as it could have been. But obviously that Marmouche news came across, and I took a little bit of an adventurous decision to get Wissa and Cunha in the same flow of time. It was partly to give myself a decision for this week, which we'll look at later on. But I was inconsolable as soon as I saw the scores on Sunday morning or whatever it was. I watched Match of the Day here on Sunday morning, usually solo, so that I'm a little bit easier to absorb the pain. And that was difficult. I won't lie. I went running straight away afterwards, and I must have pounded the river path over there, and properly, really kind of hard, because I was just desperate to kind of get rid of all of the angry, angsty energy. So I feel you. I'm sure that there are others out there who are just like me, that you build up this kind of level. I know over time you've become much better at dealing with it and moving on quickly. I'm getting there.
Well, what I didn't understand with what I said to you, and obviously, first of all, I was thinking about you on Saturday, because obviously Rich enjoys his Saturdays. Actually, enjoys life, and I kept thinking, oh God, don't look at the scores, Rich. I'm there ruining my afternoon watching. Although I wasn't. Everybody kind of blanked, so I wasn't too bothered. First of all, I brought Cunha in as well, but Wissa blanked against Ipswich, so you got that was the better fixture. That was his standout fixture. But yeah, I said to you on Sunday morning, I didn't really understand why you were so angry, and that's not meant to be a dig in any way. It's a genuine reflection, because for me it is true, because sometimes I'm really bad at dealing with stuff, but it's specific stuff. It's if the process was wrong, or I really feel hard done by, or really unlucky. Whereas your decision, is a hit, and you don't. I think you're just not necessarily usually so aggressive. So maybe you were a bit kind of felt like it wasn't your normal process. But at the end of the day, you brought in Wissa. You brought in Wissa and Cunha, two players who have been brilliant, who were, in my opinion, nailed to start. You know, talking about Cunha as well with brilliant fixtures. I thought they would both score. Yeah. Brighton have been so leaky. Wolves have been good, and to be honest, that game could have gone either way. Really, I mean, Brighton were probably the better side overall, but it was Wolves could have scored. So anyway, I just thought it was fine. I thought it was okay. There was nothing really wrong with that move. You were trying to get yourself a transfer ahead. You were bringing in two brilliant strikers with three brilliant fixtures at the end of the season. Who were like low owned. You know, Cunha's low owned. So I didn't think you should have been hard on yourself really with that one.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And actually, this is just a message generally to the. And I know that a few people. We had this conversation a bit last week. A few people in the chat were noting it, and I do think. Okay, I'm not a big one anymore. Certainly anymore, anyway. For asking for the opinion of lots of different types of people, I think it's really dangerous because they don't know you, they don't know the process you've gone through, they don't really know your team. We're in quite an odd little bubble, aren't we? Because obviously we pod together, but also the kind of people that we often talk to are in our same SKLW team, so we all know each other's teams pretty well because we have to, like, in order to win our ties or our leagues and whatever. So actually, that's quite helpful. And you can talk to those people and get a bit of support, and broadly they do want you to do well. So I'm not going to go on one of those kind of mental health spiels, but I do find it's very helpful to to know who to talk to in these situations. And that was very helpful. Anyway, hopefully you can be just as helpful this week because there are some big decisions. I mean, actually, from where we sat last week, it was interesting because we kind of went through all the strikers, and obviously Cunha and Wissa really stood out, didn't they? And Watkins was part of the big plan. But last week, it didn't really feel like the strong argument was there. And of course, now he's very much back in the conversation that everyone's having this week. So really tricky one. But yeah, again, thank you for lots of people joining. I can see a few familiar faces, a few new people. Alex Ball, our good friend, he's in a hot tub. What's that all about? God, we're wasting our time here. We should be doing this from a... Actually, if you would like to see us do the pod from a hot tub, please press like and subscribe. That will arrange. If we get, I'm trying to think of a ridiculous number where we don't have to make good on this promise,
200 likes on this video.
200 likes. Do you know what? That's not impossible.
If it happens, everyone's going to have to do that every time from then on forward. But yeah.
So basically, if you would like to see a bare-chested Danny, you know what to do. But he's about to set off for a 10k run, so that's very impressive. Another man who likes his runs as well from memory. Anyway, FPL Fellow is joining us as well. Basking in the glory of last week. We didn't talk about the Manchester United game last week, actually. we don't need to. It was a non-game, right? No one cares, But
I haven't even seen it.
Potter pulls these things out when you don't expect it. What a strange situation we're in at West Ham. Actually, yeah. Well, we should move on. Actually, the last thing I will say before we kick off with the proper stuff, because we always talk for about 14 minutes before we actually talk about anything helpful for any of you there. Is please do let us know about our kind of volumes and stuff, because we've noticed that more professional podcasts actually check that the sound is fine. I probably won't change anything, even if you tell me to change something. But I could pretend to twiddle the button on this here. Actually, no one's ever seen it, but who is it? So Adam from Above Average, this is his hand-me-down microphone, yeah. And I actually genuinely, rather than paid for the actual nuts and bolts, yeah, you probably remember this, Danny. But I went to the local DIY shop and I bolted this microphone together because that cost like £1.30.
Nice.
Whereas buying the proper ones was about 15 quid. So I was like, no, I'm not doing that. So that's the kind of pod that you're subscribing to.
Baker sent me his old camera as well, so we're full on above average. I don't want to say hand-me-downs, full-on above-average support, yeah, our friends. So
we should be so lucky to be their hand-me-downs. We'll get their hand-me-down viewers as well, hopefully.
We just need Adam to teach you how to download the pod to Spotify.
Yeah, that's next on my list. I might have to send him a few kegs of beer or something, because he's done me enough favours. Actually, another new person as well, Stephen Hinchy, third-time listener, first-time commenter. Yeah, is he going to blank this week? Well, we'll come to that later on. We should do something proper, shouldn't we? Should do something proper. So, to be honest, I was undecided whether to go for the Eze or the Palmer thumbnail this week. Let's just pretend, we'll bask in his glory for a minute, but it should be the Palmer thumbnail, really, because that's probably what everyone is going to be tuning in for. A little bit of captain discussion, and look at him there. He's ready to belt a hat-trick, Do you know what? We'll talk a little bit about the fallout from last week, just a little bit more. So, Saturday lunchtime, the news comes across that Marmoush is benched, right? I think De Bruyne was announced to start, wasn't he? He was confirmed. So I kept him personally, and a few rogue types brought in Haaland. Actually, just out of interest. So first of all, just could you confirm who you brought in as your striker to replace Marmoush?
Sorry, getting random text messages there.
You weren't listening to me. This is
Who did I bring in? Yeah, who did I bring in? I brought in Cunha. That was I didn't. You know what? That was also a reflection. Actually, thinking about it, that I didn't spend too long on certain decisions, and like we've said before, when you sort of sometimes you've got a whole decision and then you forget about the captaincy until late, or which you should never do, by the way, because captaincy is literally the most important thing in the game. But that sort of thing, and hadn't considered enough just how strong a possible. I mean, obviously, City attackers they're always a serious chance of being benched, but I should have been more prepared for actually really thinking about which striker I would want if Marmoush wasn't going to start. I wasn't prepared enough. I mean, I'm fine because I was happy with the decision. I felt pretty clear on that because of what you had. You basically had Wood. We spoke about it on the pod as well, didn't we? But we had Wood, Cunha. We narrowed it down to basically Cunha and Whistler that we liked the most. I don't know why we decided against Wood, which is maybe was a mistake.
Well, it is now that Taiwo is sort of in an induced coma. Bloody hell!
I know. That was mad.
What's that all about?
So did you see the collision? Did you see?
Yeah. So what did he? Did he smash it into his ribs? Presumably.
Yeah, he absolutely twatted the post.
Do you know what though? Fair play to him. He actually carried on, didn't he? I mean, what the hell? I don't know about you.
I'm surprised the post didn't come off worse. But yeah, that was the whole thing, wasn't it? Because then I think the physio, I didn't see the details, probably getting this wrong, but then the physio sort of gave a thumbs up or suggested he was fine, and it's like, and he probably had some, he obviously must have had some internal bleeding, something horrific. Hopefully he's all right. Signs are positive, so hopefully he's fine. But yeah, so I don't know how I feel about it now because Cunha's a bit of a tough one now, really. I'm sure we'll talk about him. I think he'll start them both.
Yeah,
it's a little bit like Marmoush in the sense that kind of always think he will start. Yeah, I don't know. Do you want to talk about Wolves? Because I've been doing a bit of reading up on Wolves, thinking about that.
Have you?
And Cunha.
Yeah, I mean, just for those who might remember last week, I actually had 2 Wolves players going into that game, so it was a proper nightmare. I had Jose Sarr as well, and it was absolutely. You can imagine one of my highlights of the weekend was Arsenal conceding 2 in the first 10 minutes because thank God, I didn't go wrong on the too wrong anyway on the rare thing. Yeah, it is tricky, isn't it? Because I get the reasoning that they have been playing incredibly well. I think they'd won something like more or less all of their last 6 games or something like that. They'd really gone on a bit of a hot streak. I'm probably wrong about that, but it was a significant
They beat before any viewers shouting at us. They did beat. They won like 6 games in a row, but they were against all the teams that were kind of below them or all the teams at the bottom. But then they did play very well against City as well. They were a better team for large spells of that game. So I think they have looked. Yeah, they are a good team. They have looked good. They lost a game against a very good team in Brighton. I don't think it's too much to read into it. I mean, they didn't have Strand Larsen, who's been very good for them recently. That was one of the things I got from the Wolves fans kind of reading up. Was it Guedes? Was it Guedes who played as the actual number 9? I think was it Guedes? It wasn't Munetsi. I think it was Guedes. Might be getting mixed up now with the names.
Yeah, I think there were. Yeah, you're right because you actually did a little bit of digging, didn't you, on kind of fan reactions to that game? So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm just trying to think about Cunha and because I know a few weeks ago it was quite hostile towards him, which was a little bit surprising, but just because he wanted to leave and it was all like, right, well, kind of fuck him off then, don't play him. But when I was pleasantly surprised to see when I look, you know, it seems to have calmed down a lot from what I saw in terms of the fans and the fans forum, and they were just kind of like, Cunha tried, and when he, you know, his touches were still magnificent, it didn't quite come off for him today. Obviously, he was at fault for the goal conceded, but they also said that they were kind of even worse with him off the pitch, as you would imagine, and that Guedes, or I think it was Guedes, so forgive me if I'm wrong on who played the number 9, but whoever it was basically described as useless. I didn't see enough of the game to kind of make that call myself, but the general feeling was that the guys who've stepped in have been rubbish. They do need Strand Larsen back, and that Cunha is still the key to unlocking everything. And it's obviously it's just a case of what that doesn't really necessarily mean anything. We already know that he's the best player, so it's how the manager views it in terms of. I kind of always thought they would need to play him, you know. Well, not need to, but it helps getting the market value up a bit. You don't just want to sit this guy on the bench for 6, 7, 8 weeks and then hope to sell him in summer. You'd think the board are saying to him, get him on the pitch. Let you know every bit of magic he does. Cunha scores 2 braces now and more absolute wonder goals. It probably puts another 10 million, you know, on his price if he is going for definite, which we don't know yet. But yeah, we can't. My guess is that he will play him because just play your best team. It seems a bit silly to just drop the guy now unless he's. And when I look kind of behind the scenes and see videos and stuff, I know he's obviously got a temper, but it doesn't mean that he's a dick. He comes across really well on behind the scenes. He looks like he comes across as a nice guy and an intelligent guy. You know, you often get these people with a bad temperature often are quite intelligent footballers, and they get frustrated because of sometimes of that kind of speed of thought, I suppose. And Larsen won the Player of the Month. Saw a little video as well. He won the Player of the Month for his 4 or 5 goals. And the first thing, you know, Cunha presented him the trophy, and Larsen was just like, "I couldn't have done it without you, brother. It's all you." And he was like, "No, don't say that. Yeah. Don't say." Cunha was like, "No, don't say that. Don't say that. You've been fantastic on your own." And it was just little things like that. And I thought, you know, he's actually a nice guy. He's just, he's just done some. I mean, that thing pulling the glasses off, that was a dickhead move. So yeah, I mean, Cunha's one of them. How you can't bench this guy? That's the problem, isn't it? It is a bit of a worry because he could well not start. I think he will, but I can't bench Cunha again in either of those 2 fixtures. I can bench him in 38 if he is dropped, but I can't bench him this week. I don't think it doesn't seem right. I don't know about you, what you feel.
Well, I was going to say actually, because I'm just thinking about it when we fast forward to our teams later. In theory, we could both sell Cunha for Watkins without too much trouble, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I could do that.
I suspect a few in the chat will advocate that. I've already ruled that one out. I do think it's a funny time of season, isn't it? Because it plays with your mind a bit. You've probably got the mental steel to move the other way from me on this one. But you know, you start second guessing your approach a little bit. I started thinking about Cunha's position in my team, and I was like, yeah, okay, he's a little bit more of a risk now. But on the other hand, like I've got a penalty-taking talisman up against a team who might not care all that much or be in the best physical or mental condition for the game. And he's now a terrific differential, right? So I kind of have to try. And you know, I get the impression, you know, with where I am at the moment, we'll talk about that a bit later on, that's the kind of risk I'm sort of forced into taking, really. So it would be very easy to replace him and probably forgo Saka and Palmer and that sort of thing. But in actual fact, there's a smidgen of an opportunity. That's probably bum logic, but I think we're all in this kind of window now where, okay, he's a chance that I have that other people don't. And so maybe there is an element of that. It's weird, isn't it? Because some people would argue going into this game that Mateta and Cunha are quite similar assets in the sense that they're probably both minutes risks and it's the same fixture and that's so on and so forth. But it wouldn't be a difficult decision as to which of those two to yeet is the phrase that I keep saying this week. So yeah, there is that one. But yeah, it was that was a tricky one. Obviously, Wissa was the other one that I bought in. I mean, I didn't know. Again, you can't predict these things, right? You don't know that someone's going to do an acrobatic overhead kick into someone's face, and there's genuinely another reality on it. I know this wouldn't have happened, but where both of those 2 players could have been sent off last week, it would have been absolutely amazing.
I know, Jesus, I didn't see the Wissa one. I heard about it.
It was very unintentional. Yeah, but
yeah, I mean, with the Cunha thing, it's a close one. I know a lot of people said they should have been sent off.
I don't know about that, but
I think obviously I don't like the double jeopardy rule generally, unless I understand the rules and if it's not intentional. I just think it needs to be an awful lot for the double jeopardy. A red card and a penalty is quite something. It happened with my dad's team, Sheffield United, in the playoff semi-final first leg, and you think, oh my god, in the championship playoff, can you imagine anything worse as a fan? In terms of what's on the line, and one of their, I think it was their centre back or centre midfielder. You got red card and a penalty, and that's it. It's tie over, absolute tie over. So I think it needs an awful lot to be double jeopardy. I think it needs to be really obvious, really bad. I think it was, and actually the one in the playoff was, because it was like 2 hands around the shoulders, just pulled him back. That was a bit more obvious. So anyway, thankfully he wasn't. But I mean, he got a 0, so it's not exactly a good week.
This is it. So João Pedro managed to outscore him in my squad without doing anything, by virtue of sitting there and using up the last game of his violent conduct charge. He still managed to outscore someone I brought in by 4 points. It's amazing when you think about it. Who actually, by the way, we'll just very briefly talk about this in your team later. But João Pedro, weirdly enough, I was trying to think to myself, would I rather have João Pedro or Cunha going forward now? It's quite a tricky one, but I quite like, if he plays as you'd expect, right? He's playing against a beach Liverpool team, in theory, right? And then Tottenham on the last day. It's now starting to be that's quite attractive, actually.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I was just going to say quickly, though, if you or I don't get Watkins and captain him, we might wish that Cunha had been sent off. So these things work out in a funny way, don't they? So, I mean, if Watkins bangs and our captain doesn't, we're going to wish Cunha had been sent off, because that would have been an easy move to Watkins.
No decisions made.
I know. So
I don't want to ruin the pod, though. But
no, I don't know. I don't know what you're thinking, so we don't at all.
Yeah, we haven't actually talked about it that much. That's true. I have the good news is I've ruled a couple of things out, which is progress for me anyway. But before we go on to talk about the other strikers on screen, I think it is important, including Haaland, actually, because someone has mentioned him in the chat. Actually, that wasn't the one I meant to click, but hello, Peter. I'm glad it's your first exposure to Last Resort. That's nice. That's a nice touch. Brian, why no Watkins over Cunha? I mean, don't get me wrong. If I had a straight choice between the two, I can tell you for 100%, I'd rather have Watkins. But I think the point, Brian, was more along the lines of, okay, I've only got 2 decisions left, really, for transfers, and obviously captains on top. It's a situation where I have to pick, essentially, the transfer kind of has to be for captaincy or I roll. And it's whether I think that Watkins is the best captain, and we'll talk about that later on. But Cunha in his spot is now a kind of weird relative differential that could be great, but it could well completely flummox. So answers on a postcard. I'll pretend to be absolutely sure about this one, but I'm probably not going to go down that route. Plus, selling Cunha to Watkins means I couldn't get to Saka if I was interested in that as well. So there's another slight element to it as well. Let's talk about Mateta very quickly. Obviously, neither of us own him because we had concerns about his minutes anyway, and obviously that's turned out okay. What do you think? If you were in a position going into this with so many people, I think it was on the Scoutcast actually earlier this week. I caught a tiny bit of it actually because I haven't seen it for ages. Our good friend Hibbo and Andy obviously has joined us here before as well. And they've more or less all got the same team, I think, in terms of like the same setup up top. And I think everyone to a man. Actually, no, that's not true. Hibbo already had Watkins, but obviously Mateta. As you know, it might have been The Wire had this situation where everyone's got Mateta. Sorry, I'm mixing my pods up. But is it a simple, straightforward sell Mateta to Watkins for you? Or is it much more about whether you think that's the right captain?
Well, it's always about the captaincy. I was just thinking, shout out to Andy as well, because he's our friend from the pod, isn't he? And he's absolutely flying. He's gone from 900k to 120k in 8 weeks.
Yeah. I think he might even be Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, he has had a huge huge run at the moment. And also, no one ever says this, but you can imagine why I'm going to say this. But I do think, just on FPL podcasts generally, you know, the role of the kind of host who knows, you know, someone who is in safe hands and you know what they're doing. I mean, I look for this more carefully probably than most, because I'm trying to do a sort of crap bargain basement version of Andy here. But I think he's absolutely terrific at it. So, sorry. Anyway,
he is. You were in awe of Andy when he was on our pod.
He's such a lovely man. Such a lovely man.
But yeah, it's all about captaincy. But captaincy is a bit of a coin toss. The question is that it's gone a bit tribal, hasn't it, about Watkins versus Palmer, and it's kind of a bit silly, because most of it really is about what works better for your team, or at least that's what I think it should be. So I know, and we'll talk about captaincy, we'll come on to it. I know that a lot of the analytics, people keep saying, the analytics guys are going, they're all going Palmer, and it's just down to the kind of EV and review and stuff. And okay, fine, but it's also not quite as simple as that, because also most of the analytics guys also don't have Mateta because of the minutes, and it's just change your path a little bit. Mateta is a big problem. So if I had Mateta, it probably would decide, because captaincy for me is so close and it is a bit of a coin flip. It almost certainly would change my path, and I don't know, because I'm not in that position, but I very possibly would captain Watkins instead of who I might go with this week anyway, because Mateta is the one. I'm sure we'll talk about Palace more, but when I look at next week, he's the one that I think is by far the most susceptible to rotation, because you've got Nketiah there, Nketiah's had to miss out a lot. Wasn't he like 40, 50 million quid or something? That might be completely wrong, but he wasn't cheap, Nketiah.
Right, this is a challenge for the chat. Find out how much Nketiah costs.
Anyway, he's a talented player, he's a good player, and he's had to miss out a lot. And Mateta, I think he might struggle a bit with a Saturday to Tuesday, and we don't know the minutes and so on. So he really is the one that I think I'd almost lean towards saying I think he's actually less likely to start than start on Tuesday. I haven't thought about this much myself because I don't own him. So I would be looking to sell Mateta if he was in my 11 and didn't have a good replacement. And therefore, Watkins is the standout obvious pick, because most people have got one transfer, not everyone. If you really like Palmer, I mean, we'll talk about Palmer captaincy whenever you want, because I think it depends on your position as well. I think there's huge opportunity there for people who are chasing or want to. 40 million, yeah, is that right? Okay, so I thought it was something like that. So yeah, it's not cheap, and he spent most of the season on the bench. So yeah, sorry, I don't mean to waffle on if that answer. My short answer is he would be the biggest problem in the team for sure. I think Sarr and Eze, I don't see as a major problem. I think they'll both start next Tuesday. Whereas Mateta, I think, doesn't. So there's a significant difference in terms of the Palace boys for me when it comes to Mateta. So it's pretty easy. Because what have they got in? Wait, so we're talking about 37 now. Who they got Liverpool away in 38 as well, haven't they?
I'd go as far to say there's only one player I would be okay with playing that week, which is Eze. But
yeah,
not ideal. But
I mean, there's the penalties as well, which helps. And I mean, there were other great picks. I think Evan Nilsson is still a great pick this week. Maybe I should have gone there last week instead of Cunha. Maybe that was quite sensible. What put me off that move was I was kind of thinking I don't like to make a move that's primarily for something in 3 weeks. It generally isn't always a great thing to do that. And I know he had. I mean, Villa was not a good fixture. That was a really tough fixture. I think City is a better fixture than Villa at the moment. I think he could do okay this weekend, Evan Nilsson. I think Bournemouth.
Yeah,
that's a bit of a 50-50 match, isn't it? Especially after the cup final. It's definitely a bit of a 50-50 match. So I think Evan Nilsson, he's one of those guys who, in contrast to some of the other strikers that we've talked about, he clearly is in form and clearly fit. He looks like the most likely scorer for Bournemouth at the moment by far. Kluivert's dropped off a cliff. Semenyo's still Semenyo. He's a good player, good minutes, gets loads of shots off, unreliable. I don't hate, it's a strong word, but I find it really difficult with players like Semenyo. I know I'm going slightly on a tangent here, but I find it really difficult with players like that to own that are essentially wingers. It's a bit like Gordon. They're not on any set pieces. They're not really reliable with the finishing, but the minutes are there. Whereas Evan Nilsson just stands out as the best pick for Bournemouth, and then they've got Leicester at home in 38. So if it was a part of a 2-move, that sort of thing could be great. If you wanted to facilitate a good midfielder like Saka, a lot of people looking at Saka in 38 or Palmer in 37 and 38. So, yeah, if I own Mateta, I would definitely be looking to sell. And that would probably change my whole path. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not necessarily going to Watkins, because I don't have Mateta. And
actually...
And in response, sorry, last thing I'll say, but in response to the question that was just asked to you as well, for me, the reason is that, rightly or wrongly, and it could well be wrong, but I think that Cunha will start. And if Cunha does start, he's still an incredible pick. So that I'm just kind of making that bet at the moment. I think he will start. If he doesn't, then it's obviously an immediate problem, and 38 is what it is. But I'm willing to take a chance that Cunha does start, to be honest.
We're just on that. I mean, I think that's the other thing, isn't it? Because I know that one might think, okay, well, there's Watkins right there. But conversely, in my head, I'm thinking, well, I unfortunately need to take the bet of I want to see what happens with Cunha. Because if he doesn't start this week, then I basically have to buy Evan Nilsson. It's more or less one of those situations where it's like, probably don't have any choice, regardless of anything else. I probably need to make that bet then. But for now, I think you just got to make the assumption. And of course, because of the way that the games are stacked this week, I can't actually remember the exactly all of them, but it's on Tuesday, isn't it? So we're not going to know. So we just have to, you have to take that gamble.
And the other thing with those fixtures, just kind of trying to dissect Cunha's in particular fixtures a little bit, is I think, and again, could be wildly wrong, but I tend to view both of those games now as high-scoring games potentially. Palace, I think the potential. Are we going to talk about Palace separately? Because otherwise, I'll go on a rant. But if we are, just tell me.
God, yeah, no, we are actually.
No, that's fine. We'll come back to that. I just want to say, but I just think whether Palace win or lose, it is a short turnaround. So I can't see them sort of turning up and being the sort of Palace that we've seen that are really solid and robust and necessarily. And I would imagine that game will be a little bit more open, first of all, and obviously they could be really kind of hungover from the cup, whether it's win or lose. They might go 120 minutes. And then the Brentford game, Brentford typically anyway, because Wolves play Brentford at home in 38, and Brentford typically anyway, especially with teams below them, like we said last week, tend to just say, unless they're playing a top club, they tend to just say, well, we're just going to score more than you today. And so many of their games like 4-2, 4-3, aren't they? 3-2, it's kind of brilliant. But if Palace win the cup, which there's every chance, I probably, again, you can never put Palace favourites against City, but I think it's 50-50, and I won't be surprised at all if Palace win the cup final, especially because I think I think the league is more important to City as well. If Palace do win, then Brentford then have nothing to play for the rest of the season, and I think then Brentford at home becomes just a fantastic game, because Brentford will still be great, but they will even more so just be like, well, we'll just let's see who can score more. So I like both those fixtures on paper for Wolves if Cunha is going to play.
Yeah, agreed. I think we need to. It's an odd one, this next conversation, because before we just do a little bit more on Palace, we'll come back to them just in a moment. Obviously, we've done a bit of it, but Isak's a really odd conversation this week. Okay, so he's on a realistically for both of us, right? He's, for whatever reason, he's probably the obvious route for many, including ourselves, if we wanted Watkins. And of course, there was this news that came out in the last day or two that's been rumbling around in the background, and no one's gone heavy on it because it's not official, about the idea that he needs an end of season operation on a sports hernia. Is that right?
That's the rumor.
That's the rumor, which has not been confirmed in any way. Just it's a little bit of a kind of fan account thing, and I think Newcastle are famously bad sources of information in terms of their fan. I mean, there's nothing to base that on really, but it's quite difficult to know whether there's any truth in that whatsoever. Of course, that's tied to the fact that some people were saying, well, not fact, rather, the opinion that he's not been himself lately and hasn't been central to some of the attacking and missed a few chances and that sort of thing. So I suppose, long story short, I mean, are you considering Isak to Watkins? Do you think there's a legitimate reason why that's a path you might take?
I think it's reasonable for a lot of people. I just want to say, actually, I'll just give full context because I did a bit of digging when that rumor came out, and
did you?
Again, the chat can tell me if I've missed anything, but basically, it came from this one Newcastle account initially, and like you said, there are loads of these Newcastle in the knows who aren't in the know at all, and it's kind of really hard to decipher who's got remotely any credibility at all. And this guy shared this thing basically saying, yeah, he needs an operation after the season, which is fine. Maybe the thing about that is it makes a lot of sense because we've seen that Isak hasn't been quite his best for the last 6 or 7 or 8 weeks. And so it probably is true because it would make sense that he isn't 100% and there's a slight issue. It's also convenient because it doesn't necessarily need to be true. It's just come from this one guy. And then I looked at this guy, I say guy, sorry, I think it's a guy, but scrolling through all his tweets, and there's a lot of replies over the course of the year laughing at this account for sort of consistently getting things wrong, although he does seem to have got a few team sheets correct as well, so it's like, okay, that's difficult. And then I think there was one reply to that tweet as well with someone else who we don't know who it is, but it's another Newcastle account with like 3,000 or 4,000 followers saying, yeah, I heard about this just before the final, it's a sports hernia, it's okay to play through, but it's a little bit of an issue. So it could be complete nonsense. So just for full disclosure, that's where it's come from. It's just a couple of accounts, and we don't really know. But it does make sense in terms of what we're seeing, doesn't it? And if you've got any type of issue, especially that kind of, I was reading up about sports hernias and stuff, and it sort of says as long as you're not, it's not too bad as long as you're not strenuous. It's like, well, football games are strenuous, so how bad is it? I mean, sometimes it's one of those. If you've got anything that even a certain slight movement just makes you wince or go, oh, and you feel something. Your brain is built to be like, I'm not making that movement again. Like, I don't know what's going on here. I don't want to be doing that. I don't want to make things worse. So I'd hope it's not that. I mean, I was thinking back to flashbacks for the game against Chelsea at the weekend, and there were occasions when Isak was running onto the ball in the box and stuff and was really going for it, sprinting and trying to hook a ball around and didn't look in discomfort. So you think, doesn't seem to be anything too bad for me. So anyway, it is a difficult one with Isak because it feels kind of okay to sell him if you do want to, because he's got Arsenal this weekend. So it doesn't feel like a great fixture. He has still scored like 3 in his last 5 or something. I think at least one of them was a penalty, because I remember the game, was it Brighton, when they had like 3 penalty shouts and then he finally got one in the last minute. And guess what? It counts for a lot. That's the difficult thing with Isak, is just penalties. Strikers these days, a goal is almost invariably 9 points, which is a lot and too much, and it's kind of annoying, So he doesn't need much to walk away with 9 points. And then the other thing is, the reason why it's potentially a bit more of an issue is if they do beat Newcastle, if they do beat Arsenal this weekend, which I think they probably won't, although they have beaten them at least once this season, maybe a couple of times already. I think they played in the Cup as well, didn't they? They've had the better of them this season, which I think will piss Arsenal off a bit. But if they were to beat Arsenal, they don't actually need to
they're done.
Worry about 38 at all. So if he has an issue, then it's a real, you don't want, player in 38 not starting and not knowing if they're going to play or not. So that's a slight minutes issue as well, that Newcastle could well win this weekend and then it becomes a problem. But you've got, it's still Isak. He's got penalties. He's done well against Arsenal already this season. And then they do play Everton in 38. And I've seen people saying as well, just a little small note to add on to that, we could even see Pickford rested in 38, because people are saying Sunderland playoff finals the day before, and that's happened before with Pickford, because he's such a mad fan, he'll be going up there, and it's happened before, like a couple of years ago, whenever it was that Sunderland were in the playoffs. It must have been League One, and he didn't play that game either. It was like Begovic played. So just a small note to say that I've heard that as well, and it doesn't make a huge difference. But if Isak suddenly is playing, guaranteed to play, and Newcastle could do with the result, and they're playing Everton in 38, and he's got Everton at home, and they've got a sub keeper, it's like, did you really want to be without Isak? So, yeah, it's tough. But I can totally, again, if people are selling Isak because it's their only route to Watkins and they're not happy with the captain, and you want to captain Watkins, then absolutely fine, because the most important thing in the game is captaincy. Watkins looks like a brilliant captain this weekend. and he's probably a really good pick in 38 as well. So generally, I think the move is fine. I think it's fine. I'm still a little bit. It's always difficult for me to move off such a good player. This is the other last thing I'll say. But this other, it's the other interesting thing, isn't it? Because it's so. How long is it that we watch Isak for kind of not operating at that best before any of us are able to just be like, okay, I can let Isak go because he's so terrifying. He's so good. And we just sit on these players for weeks, don't we? We're getting like 2-pointers, a 6-pointer, and a penalty. Or so difficult to let these guys go, isn't it?
Yeah, because people were talking about. I mean, Salah's situation is a little bit different. We'll come to that in a bit, but you know, there is an element of that there, isn't there, as well? I think we all went through the same thing earlier in the season with Palmer as well. You know, like sort of a little bit in denial as to what the situation was at that time. I think obviously his form has picked up a bit, you know, at least visually, but there was a similar element to that as well. Yeah, I think. We'll come to my decisions later, but it pretty much is kind of just a complete straight shootout between the two. I've been like so many people. What's odd about it is you almost have to kind of push yourself into a camp where you know you're fully on side with one pick and one captain and the person that you're selling or another. But the truth of it is that you're allowed mentally to probably mourn the path that you didn't travel because they are both really good ideas for different reasons. You know, it's very legitimate to say, oh, well, Watkins for both games looks pretty good. You know, there's some chance of penalty involvement. I think I'm still broadly on the side that I don't think so, but that's just me. It's easy. I think one of the things I was watching is that as soon as this narrative gets out there, you know how it is. People feel emotionally much more comfortable when a decision's made a little bit easier for them. And as soon as people say, "Oh, Isak's got surgery at the end of the season," like, okay, good, brilliant, made my decision. Don't need to think about it anymore. Brilliant. But of course, that doesn't make it the right decision. Just makes it more convenient, you know. And I'm very wary of that because I've been susceptible to that in the past. I suspect you're a little bit better at this, but when a link like that comes out, like, oh, thank God he's got a hernia. Brilliant. Sorted me out. I don't need to think about it anymore. Bang, Watkins in. But on the other hand, there's currently no evidence that Isak is losing, you know, any particular minutes. They've still got things to play for. He's still brilliant. He's got penalties. Watkins probably hasn't. You know, there's a flip side to that as well. Yeah, really interesting, Heather. Isak to Cunha already for the game week 36. That was a bold move. I hope it goes well for you for obvious reasons. Okay, so we'll move off of Isak for a minute. Back to I don't know whether we've got. Actually, do you know what? I should probably mention it very briefly. Haaland, if you did go there, what would you do?
Oh God, I'd be.
There are some, not people that generally hang around here, but you never know.
I'd be thinking about game week 1 next season. No, that's a bit harsh, but I don't like him as a pick at the moment. I didn't like it last week for that reason, in the sense that I'm not sure that the next couple of great fixtures for him anyway. Not entirely sure what his. I mean, I think he'll start them both as long as he's fit. So I suppose the minutes will be good. Maybe just can play all the way through. But I just think Bournemouth's a really tough game. So, having said that, it's Haaland. You know, if you've got him, and people who've got him have got him because they're almost certainly because they're chasing rank, which is fine as well. You know, it was. I can totally understand some of the people who did that move in a sense because it was crazy. Did you think about Haaland? His effective ownership was 10% in the top 10k, or at least I think that was across the board, to be honest. So I saw some people go triple captain, and I think, you know, that's like 290% gains on Haaland against Sunderland. I mean, it was unbelievable, really, isn't it? So it is still Haaland. I mean, the games they need to win. You could go for captaincy again if you want. There's no major problem. I think now that you're there, I don't think you come off Haaland. You don't hit him out, do you? So
yeah, I mean, instinctively, I tend to think the people that did go there were really intent on using this as a wedge to begin a chase, right? Or to be part of that. So one would assume they weren't particularly happy with rank. You don't do that move to protect, do you? Let's be honest. So I think you probably do have to double down now, realistically, with that. But actually, really good question, and nice to see JC in the chat. Would you include Haaland on your free hit? I think that's a really good question, actually, because ever since I saw it there a minute ago, I'm like,
oh God, yeah,
because you could legitimately go without Salah, couldn't you, for your own reasons?
Yeah, I think that's probably what you're going to do if you're going to free hit, because you're probably not going to have them both. I can't think what the funds are like now, but I certainly wouldn't have them both, because I'd definitely have Palmer on a free hit. I'd definitely have Watkins. That's quite a lot of cash already. So I think you're just making a bet against Salah, which is fine. If I was putting my money on it, I still think Salah will outscore Haaland this week. So it's a scary one, but it's fine if you're in a position where you really want to go for it, because it's pretty close. I think it's similar to what we're going to say about Palace. Liverpool are obviously on the beach a little bit, and quite literally, but also, I think that's sort of slightly overplayed a bit. These guys aren't going to be going bonkers on out on the piss every night. They're sort of sensible. Obviously Salah doesn't drink at all. Can't see Van Dijk getting absolutely mullered. These people are just, they have a couple of drinks and stay reasonably sensible. I think they'll probably, they'll come up, they'll turn up and play. They've got nothing to lose. I can see them scoring goals. But anyway, would I have Haaland on a free hit? That's a really good question, isn't it? Because so Watkins is one striker down. Who are the other strikers that we would consider?
Vardy, some people would do.
Vardy, I think you'd have on a free hit. Yeah. I think you'd have Vardy on a free hit.
I mean, if you go Haaland, I guess you can build a structure with Haaland and Vardy pretty easily, can't you?
Yeah, I mean,
there's not many great strikers this week.
Yeah, my gut answer is no. I wouldn't, because in terms of what I think is going to get the most points, the answer would be no, because I don't. But if you're really going for it, no problem. You can sort of go in Haaland over Salah. City are just really struggling at the moment, aren't they? I've not liked, I'm already a bit I don't like De Bruyne as a pick. I never have. I don't like the City players as picks, apart from Vardiol and Diaz. So they're really struggling in attack at the moment. So
I think just having a quick look at fixtures, but I think unquestionably, you go 4-5 in midfield. There's absolutely no doubt about that whatsoever. It's just whether you go. Well, I suppose you probably do go for 2 up top. Yeah, it's an interesting question though. Thank you for throwing it in there, JC, because it wasn't. I mean, it's Watkins +1 probably, isn't it? Yeah, and he says back in the chat, I'll just bring it up again. Don't necessarily need Salah or Haaland, to be fair, but minimal striker options after. Yeah, of course. Yeah, see, this is it, isn't it? Jackson actually would have been really handy this week. God, yeah, that would have been a great pick actually. And actually, we should mention about free hitters, because there are more than you think. Certainly in the people that I've talked to, there's a few knocking around this week. 1 or 2 people are going a week early on that. For I know a lot of people would leave it to the last day, but perhaps they want to save a little bit of sweat and do it for this week instead. Okay, just a quick word in case there's anything else that you want to talk about on Palace. There's not much, but I suppose ultimately it's, are you going to play them? And are you going to sell them? I mean, those are the 2 things, aren't they? I'm a little bit more. I think it's been overplayed a little bit personally, and it should be said. And this is the funny thing with the nature of how FPL pushes you into weird avenues and searching for strange things on search engines that you never thought you would before. But I can report here that Eze and Sar, both good lads, very religious. They take their diet very, very seriously, and I don't think alcohol is the biggest problem for those 2. So certainly not Sar. So I think that should give us a little bit of hope. Sar is one of those energetic machines as well, isn't it? I honestly think you could play him for 120 minutes every week and he'd probably be fine.
Yeah, totally. It's funny, isn't it? Because I think generations are different now as well. It's funny that
Yeah.
a lot of this kind of narrative around them being pissed, basically, and literally hungover, is a lot of us guys who are a little bit older, from the 90s. This isn't the people aren't the same anymore. Like, a lot of young people don't even drink anymore. It's not the 90s anymore. It's not Paul Merson and Tony Adams and all those guys after a cup final who are just literally going to still be in the club 3 days later. Like, these guys, most of them probably aren't really like that. Like, it's just a different culture these days. I mean, Eze's the sort of guy. I said Eze's a very good boy and a Christian. Eze's probably completely leathered off 2 shots. He's the sort of guy who's absolutely annihilated off 2 shots and then wakes up with absolutely no hangover whatsoever because he never drinks.
The easiest man to spike. If you were second. I mean, just to add, this is completely irrelevant to some, but you are absolutely right on the young people drinking thing. I mean, living in London, you are very aware that a lot of people just don't do it for all sorts of background reasons, for religion and so on. But often it's just because of they've turned to a weird sort of clean living bunch. They're not like how we were.
I know. It's funny.
You could spot the odd one out, couldn't you? When you went to uni and the first time round for in our case anyway, it was very much a case of everybody did drink, pretty much. But now I think the stats are something like over a quarter of all uni students don't drink anymore at all, which is pretty significant.
Well, that's what I mean. So if you ask the average kind of 20-year-old what the Palace players will be like if they win the cup final on Saturday when they play on Tuesday, I bet the average response would be very different to if you asked us a lot who were
be absolutely murdered.
Yeah, it's just completely different. So they're all professionals. As you say, I mean, Sarr, I don't think drinks at all. I think he's a Muslim, isn't he? He's certainly a practicing Muslim, so I assume he doesn't drink. I was going to say Christian then. I mean, Eze. I don't think it'd be much of a problem for him. I mean, he is playing very well and playing probably in the hope of getting a contract somewhere else. So we've covered it, I think, with Palace, because I think Mateta is a risk, is a worry, and that's more about fitness and the alternatives. But I think generally Palace, I mean, it's a worry for me because I've got Sarr and Eze, and I plan to sell Sarr, and I'm definitely worried about that because he's looked brilliant, hasn't he? I think he's had over 1 XGI in the last 2 games. His numbers are right up there again. I mean, he could have mega hauled on Sunday. That goal, was it? Well, he should have had the assist for Munoz early on. That was a crazy, ludicrous goal to disallow. Did you see that offside from Mateta? Did you see it?
Oh yeah.
He actually, the defender had both feet in his half, and Mateta had both of his feet in his own half. But his arm, his big bicep was leaning over the halfway line, and his arm was leaning over such that it was deemed to be passing the defender's both feet that were in the other half. I mean, it's completely ridiculous. And it was like 3 minutes before, well, it wasn't 3 minutes, but it was well before the goal. Anyway, so what is Sarr? He's just putting up the numbers every single week, isn't he? So it's definitely worrying selling either of those guys right now. I'm going to keep Eze because he's the one who's, I guess he is in a bit more form and he's on penalties and looks great at the moment, doesn't he? And he keeps
and of course, he's still a relative difference maker, right?
Yeah.
If I was going into 38 playing Sarr, I'd be a little bit. I think I'd probably end up wobbling and maybe taking another hit, to be honest with you. Whereas Eze is one of those players like, I'm fine with it. Anything could happen here. There is an element of that as well. Yeah, and Munoz, I think you do play him if you have him, to be honest with you. He's one of those players, isn't he? He's such a high potential, and again, he's another one of those players where if you played him for 120 a week, I think he'd be absolutely fine. He's one of those guys, I don't really see an issue. They've got no real backup, have they? Unless you suddenly think that, God, I've forgotten his name. But if you think the old timer could sort of replace him, not Nathaniel Klein, was the other Ward, that's it.
Oh right, yeah.
Could get up and down. He's kind of the Cresswell of Crystal Palace, isn't he? Big up to Cresswell, by the way. He's about to have his end of his career at West Ham. He's a complete legend. Anyway, I think we're probably done with Palace, aren't we? Realistically, it is a tricky one though. There are going to be lots of people in the chat who are thinking about, do they play Sarr against Isak, Munoz against an Arsenal defender, Munoz against a Forest defender, that kind of thing. Do you have any particular takes on
that? Broadly, no. I don't ever play like that. I don't ever play like kind of. I don't bench defenders because I've got a striker playing against them. Sometimes it might be 1% of thought if it's like really, really close between keepers or defenders, but generally just play who you think's the best player. It's a bit of a tricky one. In fact, it's relevant to me this week because I've currently got double Arsenal defence against Isak, and I could easily play the Wolves keeper or the Milenkovic. So that's a dilemma for me to think about.
Yeah.
But if you're really not sure, I just generally just go with who you think are the best.
Or just sell Isak and then it's fine.
Just sell Isak, yeah, and then it's fine.
Well, we'll come to that. Speaking of selling Isak versus Watkins, there's always the other side. I thought I would pull these two quotes. What I did earlier is I thought I've seen so much kind of. You talked about the kind of tribalism of this decision this week. You know, you're either a Watkins person or a Palmer person. I've seen plenty of people who are considering doing both, by the way, so it's not quite like that. But lots of comments like this, so I'll just read these two out for those who are perhaps doing the ironing and didn't want to have to look at the screen. He hasn't got. This is Cole Palmer. He hasn't gone big since 8th of December. It's like backing Foden or Son at this point. The last time Palmer scored from open play was January. Chelsea have been poor and without a striker. The fixture is usually cagey with very few goals. And the other comment, if not chasing, I can't actually read it because of my things in the way, and needing to captain Palmer, I would steer clear. Looks well out of form and possibly nursing an injury. Yeah, so I don't know where you want to start on this one, but it's very, very divisive, this one, isn't it? But I think people do immediately make this assumption that people considering it are purely following a pattern algorithm and that's it. They're not questioning it, and that's all. So I guess, what do you think?
Yeah, I guess because it just almost feels personal with some people. I guess it probably is a bit of that. People are probably annoyed at this concept of or this idea if they think people are picking him because of the models or reviews, ratings, and so on. And that's hilarious, isn't it? It's like picking Foden or Son at this point. We think Foden was player of the season last year, and Son's one of the best, players and goal scorers of all time. But yeah, it's kind of true. They've both been. That's how bad they've been. Like I said at the start, I mean, people should never allow it to get personal or get annoyed at other people's picks, and you've got to open your mind up a bit and just think about why. I mean, I just think Palmer's a great pick for captain this week, and I think Watkins is a great pick for captain. My personal view on Palmer isn't. It's nice that he's rated very highly by the models and reviews got him really high. It's always nice to have that kind of another piece of evidence. I would have thought so anyway, because United are absolutely shit, and we've been shit, and Chelsea have actually been playing quite well. They're at home; they need to win. My view on Palmer, I said it a couple of weeks ago. It is also about his form and what I've seen from him and what he said and stuff. That is kind of important to me as well in terms of what I feel, because with it being very close. Because I think Watkins is. I'd probably say I feel like Watkins is probably slightly more likely to get a return of the two. To get something out of the game. And it's kind of what it feels like, because Spurs are just that bad and Watkins is great. I don't know that I say that it feels slightly more reliable, but then you've got to factor in obviously Palmer's a midfielder, gets more points, gets the clean sheet points and so on. But yeah, I mean, I like Palmer because of what I saw, what I have seen from a couple of weeks. I don't think he is out of form. I think he's still been playing well, but he did have that moment. He was the best player on the pitch against Liverpool, wasn't he? And I did say that week that I did like what he said after the game. I really liked what he said after the game. I said, as a kind of psychologist, and that's the sort of thing, what he was talking about, acceptance, and it was it was quite profound. And I just really like that because it did reflect on exactly what I'd seen in the Liverpool game and kind of what I saw in the Newcastle game, where he just said, look, I realise I'm young. I'm not going to be invincible. That's just not the way my career is going to be. I'm not going to be invincible like I have been for 18 months. I need to accept that. That's what's going to happen to every footballer. You've got to just work hard. And you saw that reflect on the pitch. everything was just much more direct from him, and just he kind of, to me, he's looked much more like that player the last 2 games that he had for all that time previously. He did go through a real knock of confidence that you could see what was affecting his game. So I really like what I've seen from him the last few games, and like we've said, a lot of it comes just down to what it makes sense for people's teams. So a lot of people feel kind of probably forced into the certain moves, and they get even more kind of, emotional about it and take it personally, in the fact that maybe they don't have the money to get Palmer, and they do have Mateta. It's easy to get Watkins, and then it becomes, you know what it's like. It's not an option for you, so it becomes, and just this, people ganging up about, and it's all the safety of the group and so on, isn't it? The bottom line to me is they're both great captaincy picks, and it doesn't make sense for my team. I don't have Mateta. I do have double Palace midfield. I don't really want to go into the last 2 weeks with Sarr and Eze. They've both been brilliant, but there is a few question marks about Tuesday, and then they've got Liverpool away. So my biggest weakness on paper is Sarr at the moment, in my view. And I can do Sarr straight to Palmer. And I love that captaincy. I think a lot of people as well, people always tend to, not everyone, but people tend to view it quite negatively, don't they? And sort of think what could go wrong. It's always about what could go wrong if I don't own Watkins, because everyone's going there, because the whole of Twitter is going there, and all the content creators are going there, and all captaining him. And it is scary. I will be scared. And I'm like, I'm not trying to throw away rank. I only do things if they're reasonable. I just try and get the best possible rank. I just try and get the most possible points. But I quite like it if that also comes with the opportunity to captain someone who is going to be really low owned. Palmer is going to be, what was he like? He was like 3% in the top 10K last week. That I can also justify. I do think he's the best captain this week. For me, that's my personal view. All things considered, I think it's very close with Watkins. So the fact that I've got the opportunity to bring someone in who I think is the best, if not the joint best captain this week, who no one will own, and I feel really good about, and it also plugs the hole in what I think is the biggest weakness in my team, is it all just makes perfect sense. So that's what makes sense for my team. I could get Watkins for anyone, but as I say, I'd rather sell Sarr at the moment than sell Acuna or João Pedro. And I think sometimes you do have to just pull yourself away from that fear. We all have fear, find that kind of safety in the group, don't we? And fear what could go wrong. And it's like, some people, I just think, people like Late Riser, I know him well, and he loves Cole Palmer, and he's still got his triple captain left. And I'm thinking, I don't know if he's going to watch this pod or not, but I'm thinking that's the easiest triple captain for me ever, because you get a brilliant captain who's a midfielder on paper who no one's going to own, and you're chasing rank. So I just think look at the positives as well. Yes, it could hurt, but I can see you reading loads of comments that are probably shouting abuse or
no, it's good. Do you know what? Step back for a minute, and sometimes you have to remember why you kind of enjoy the game. And in a way, it's great that people are getting really uppity and irate and passionate about these two or three captain choices that we're running through now, and indeed on the next slide as well. But people do really have a position. I think we'll talk about other captains in a few minutes' time. But JC again, when was the last time Watkins went big? I looked at this earlier actually. I think his highest score of the season is 13. And of course, that's incredible, and he could easily. I guess owners would probably take that right now, right? But ultimately, they are hoping that he gets his. What was it, Brighton a couple of seasons ago? Sort of 21, 23 points, something like that. I'm trying to remember whether I did have him. I don't think I captained him, but anyway. So they're hoping for something along those lines. But the thing is, with Palmer again, if it goes right, it's 20. 21. This is the thing. It's obviously that's unlikely. It's a rare occurrence, but it is plausible. I think it's worth saying as well. I was doing some reading before this. You're the United fan, so you'll know a little bit more than me. But okay, so Euro out, Delict out. Fans on the whole seem to be like, well, I don't know whether they're going to risk both or any of Shaw or Maguire. I think that's a bit of a debate. And then you've got Friedrichsen. Is it Howard? You'll know more than me. Is it Friedrichsen or Eriksson?
Friedrichsen.
Oh, you not Eriksson. Clearly not Eriksson. If you play him at centre back, then we're all in trouble. But yeah, I don't know. Does that factor into this at all? I know the strength
Yeah, I
of
mean,
both
this
teams is questioned. I think it's a little bit more likely that Spurs play more their starting centre backs than United would on paper for me. But I mean, that's just a question.
Yeah. I mean, just to go back to Watkins and JC's point, his numbers haven't been great. I mean, I'm not trying to play down Watkins. I think there's also an element of people getting a little bit too carried away with how good Watkins is as well as a pick, potentially just a little bit. There is, his numbers haven't been great the last few weeks. I think he's had like 1.5 XGI or something. His last 4 appearances have been okay. Someone said he's had like 3 shots on target in the last 4 games or something. So but I mean, he's looked good. I think he's decent. But yeah, I mean, just sometimes you just got to look at the black and whites for me. And regardless of what I think about Palmer's form, I do feel good about him as a player. But even if you don't, you're getting a guy who, so, he was the highest scorer in the FPL last season. He's still the second highest, I think, or the third. I don't know if he's been overtaken. He's as bad as he's been for that period. He's still the second highest scorer in the game or the third highest scorer in the game. He is central to everything Chelsea do. They play on Friday night. They've got to win against a United team that don't care about this game, that might play a strengthened team to get people to have a run out. But every week I've acknowledged it. I've felt the bias, my own bias about United, thinking, "Oh, our team's really good on paper. Like, Casemiro's playing better, and I think we're going to do okay in this game. I think we're going to be defensively all right. I think back to like that Brentford game a couple of weeks ago. I know that was 2 or 3 days after Europe, but we got absolutely annihilated. Every week when I thought we were going to play all right in the league, we're offering nothing in defence. We really are that porous. So I don't think it really matters the team that because the players will be a little bit fearful of injury. They're not going to be fully in it. They're not going to be like going for it. Apparently, when Yoro did get injured, Amorim was like, you could see how angry it was on his face. It was almost that face of fuck's sake. I knew that, I didn't want to be risking these guys, and he's gone in. He has got injured. Now he's out, and he's such an important player. That could play into even his selection. But Palmer is one of the best FPL players in the game. There's only Salah who's better than him still, in my opinion. I keep saying this 1,000 times. He's got so many avenues. He's on penalties. He's incredible at penalties. He's on all free kicks. He's on set pieces. He's the number 10 in a Chelsea team that are playing pretty well. That they just need to win the 2 games in the guaranteed Champions League. Jackson is a bit of a blow, but it could be Neto up front, who played very well in the striker position, and Palmer was put up really good numbers in those 3 games. He had like over 1 XGI or something in those 3 games. It could be George up front, which it's probably less likely, but the Chelsea fans would probably be happy. I'd be pretty happy with that because he's a bit of a handful in the number 9 position. So it could be Neto or George. And yeah, you've got a guy who's just an incredible FPL pick at home against a terrible team. So it's not really much different to Watkins, but the joy is you get to captain this guy who hardly anyone's going to own. It's a great opportunity, but it's about the process. So I don't play through fear personally. It doesn't make logical sense for my team. That's what I mean about the process. The logic for my team is not to replace a good striker with Watkins because I'm worried about Watkins going off and other people having. The logic for my team is to get rid of a midfielder, keep my strikers, and get Palmer and have a brilliant captain. So, yeah, I know I'm going a bit of a ramble, but it's got a bit tribal, and it really doesn't need to be. I think the numbers are justified on the models. I think a lot of the guys who kind of strict analytic players, they don't know Mateta, and they have lined it up, and they've got that move ready, and I'm sure they'll be delighted that the fact that his ownership will be so low. And I will be terrified on Friday night because if Watkins bangs and Palmer doesn't, then I'm not going to get a top 1K, and if so it will decide my season. But if Palmer bangs,
there's a couple of secondary elements to this as well, which is that. Okay, so for one thing, I won't talk about it at length because it's everything needs to be on the down low. But what's funny is that we're in a kind of SKLW final, aren't we, this week? Where I'm going to be a little bit frank here. I think if Palmer bangs heavy, the chances are we'll get absolutely smashed. So I kind of can't win, but on the other hand, backing Palmer is a kind of nice consolation prize. So I don't know. I mean, obviously there's a chance to both do well and all the rest of it, but or badly. which case, it's, as someone said in the chat, you know, it makes for a long game week. Because obviously Friday through to was it Wednesday? You know, something like that. So
it was like Marmoush when I had Marmoush captain last week or the week before. It wasn't nice after he blanked on the Friday.
Pretty unpleasant. And I think also it is worth. I'm not the best person to ask about, you know, rank and what your goals are and that sort of thing, but instinctively, I am aware that I'm in a fairly comfortable limbo state, which is to say that I'm not really sure backing the most popular captain will actually make a great deal of sense this week anyway. So it's one of those awkward situations where if they're quite close, I probably have to go with the one that's more likely to have the highest opportunity. So it is one of those situations, which is uncomfortable for someone like me because I'm terribly boring. But that will be something playing on my mind just a little bit as well. Just want to address you have talked a little bit about Jackson already, haven't you? I was going to say that comment's already been dealt with.
Yeah. It's a bit of a blow, isn't it? But it's just a bit of a blow.
Yeah.
It's a small dentish, maybe.
Let's have a quick look at the four side by side. Brian looks wide there. I think I might have fouled up a bit. Brian's hench, isn't he? Christ, the man. You know, he's but there you go. I suppose, I don't know. Do we want to do one of these? Do we want to rank them?
We could do.
We?
I'm just thinking more about Watkins in my head. You know, I suppose the other thing we didn't mention. What there is also a bit of a question mark on his minutes. I'm not saying I think he'll definitely start, but there is a big difference. We have seen that you can ruthlessly just bring him off when you don't expect him to. He did that the other week, didn't he? Brought Marlon on. Was it like a 70th minute sub or something? Was it earlier, something like that?
Yeah, 70. Yeah.
So Marlon's there. I mean, we could easily see. It could be Watkins who does the business if it is, but we could easily see Villa 2 or 3-0 up and cruising.
So what you're saying?
Maybe he wants to save Watkins.
Paint this scenario now. Sorry, Watkins on the pitch with Asensio for 70 minutes. Asensio on the penalties anyway. Watkins and Asensio go off. Marlon comes on. Some other guy gets the penalty. You know. Just going to put it out there so that everyone's scared.
Yeah, Roger sets up Marlon for a brace at the end. Yeah.
Well, that would be good fun for, in a sense. Just out of interest, by the way. Oh no, we should. I suppose I don't know. We didn't put a separate spot in for Villa, did we? But obviously, I have no Rodgers either, so I've got nothing at the moment. I mean, how is there any point bringing Rodgers in at this point?
Not unless you're really happy with the rest of your team. Like it's not. You're not making defensive moves, are you? And I don't think anyone should be. It's still Morgan Rodgers in game week 37, who's not a captain. It is what it is. It's a bit. I do like the fact that I own him this week. Quietly feel very good about it, but no, I can't. There aren't many people who've got enough transfers or enough of a comfy team to do that. I think you just make your transfer based on captaincy. But yeah, do you want to rank him first or me?
Oh, okay. Yeah. To be honest with you, I think based on everything that we're likely to know by deadline, I've kind of immediately ruled Salah out. I'm very happy to own him, but I just instinctively I just couldn't see me sitting there on Friday being okay looking at it. So it is one of those things. Again, I hadn't quite appreciated, by the way, how many I don't know how to phrase this now, but how many managers who are primarily very interested in algorithms and the advice that Review gives, etc., had not gone for Salah on wildcard and had deliberately avoided it or have lost him already. So that's something that's really interesting to me. And I hadn't really recognised the extent of it until this week. But it's just the unknown, isn't it? By the time Friday comes around, we just won't know enough to know what the Liverpool situation is. And I don't know, Brighton are enough of a difficult opposition to think that it's possible that game might go in his favour. It's quite plausible that it could be the other way around, but they've got something good to play for. The defenders are broadly back, aren't they? So I don't feel good about it. Fulham, though, did at least look absolutely rubbish when I watched the highlights against Everton. So I think if you did have to stick it, there's a lot of people in the chat this week. I wouldn't say he's my first choice or anything like that, but I don't hate it. I think I feel similarly about it to the last couple of weeks, which is that there's feel like there's a reliable return in there. But is there a 15 to 20 point game in there? I don't know. Instinctively, probably not, but I think there's a good return in there for Mbeumo. I wouldn't completely rule it out for people at all. So I don't know what your thoughts are on him before we decide.
Yeah, I mean, Bumo's Bumo. He's just a really good, solid pick. I definitely like him this week. I've been a reluctant Bumo captain. I think I probably need to readjust that. He's like, what is he? He's like second or third highest scorer in the game, isn't he? So versus Salah, I still lean towards Salah actually at the moment. Bumo's amazing, but I just, like you said, I just think Salah, I just feel like he's just got a higher ceiling. Although I say that, I know Bumo's got like 2 19-pointers or something already, hasn't he, this season? Something ridiculous. I just think Liverpool, by Monday night they are home. They're home. Are they home on Friday or Saturday morning from these trips and stuff? And Salah is still, he's desperate for his own personal record. I think Liverpool they'll put out a strong team, and they've got nothing to lose. They're just kind of, I can see both teams going for it in that game. Often high-scoring games between Brentford and Fulham. Yeah, okay, that's okay. That's interesting and fair enough if it's similar teams and same managers and stuff. Sorry, I'm just getting a beer delivered. Thanks.
Nice.
Lucky
you.
I know. Yeah, I don't know with Fulham because they've been bad, haven't they, last few weeks, and the manager's been annoyed that they capitulated a little bit. So you never really know if that means are they gonna sort of go a little bit back to basics and just be like, what the fuck are we doing? Like get to grips in the actual defense. Robinson's I think still injured though, which is a blow. But Salah's just one of them where I just feel confident he's gonna get the returns at some point. He's gonna go big. So I just slightly edge Salah over Bumo, I think. And then I'm biased here, but I think it's really close with Palmer and Watkins, but I prefer Palmer. I hope I don't live to regret that next week, but I think I just do slightly prefer Palmer. I mean, Palmer is a standout captain for me this week, but it's real close with Watkins. So I think I go Palmer, then Watkins, then Salah, then Bumo.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine. I think, Salah, again, he's a little bit, again, it's a little bit like the Palmer Watkins conversation in the sense that I get the impression that Salah instinctively feels like there's a higher ceiling than Mbeumo, but I'm more likely to get your one return out of Brighton this week. And it's a little bit like that on the Watkins Palmer issue as well, isn't it? Instinctively, Palmer feels like one of those again. If it works out, but in my case, for example, it could legitimately completely change. Within the context of where the season's going to finish, it could change a fair amount. Whereas I don't think Watkins would probably change an awful lot. I don't know. It's very difficult to predict, isn't it, the ownership before it happens. But I think last week, anyway, I've got this wrong. You'll know just as much as I will, anyway. I think 10k ownership for Palmer was something like 3.6%. Watkins was a smidgen higher, but it's going to jump. I think it's almost definitely the case, based on who's buying who already.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard to guess, but you tend to assume that Watkins' ownership by deadline will be, what do you reckon, 3 times higher than Palmer?
I think it'll be probably quite a bit more than that. Let me just double check on the latest.
Because it's such an easy route, isn't it?
I mean, Palmer's net transfers in of 15,000. And Watkins' net transfers in a 225,000.
Right, so it's brown trousers time.
Yeah, like no one's going Palmer. It's really, I mean, in terms of the masses, it's just no one's going there. So it is a huge differential. That's what I mean about people with triple captain. Personally, I'd be all over that. That's my approach. If I can justify a captain as good as Palmer this week, of course he could easily blank. apologies in advance if you listen to my advice, but that's just how I view it entirely. I always struggle to captain strikers anyway. I'm not a huge fan of it, but also, yeah, just want to say, talking about Bumo, it's actually an interesting one because, like we said, it's after the deadline. But if City win, that's a massive game with Brentford and Fulham, and if Palace win, it's a nothing game. Perhaps that doesn't really matter that much, to be honest, because Brentford in nothing games do tend to just have just loads of goals. So I don't really know what that means, but there could be a little bit heads down. Brentford can qualify for Europe, and if Palace win, they can't. And I think Fulham still can, can't they? But if Palace win, they can't mathematically. Yeah. So, and I fancy Palace just about. I think I know they won't be bookies' favourites, but I just fancy Palace just a little bit, 55% in my head.
Well, I mean, I got a rare opportunity to watch that semi-final because my wife fell asleep on the sofa on a Saturday afternoon, so it was quite fortuitous, really. So I got to watch that. But ultimately they were playing who other people would say were a better team, and they convincingly won. So we've been here before, so it's quite possible they were comfortably better when I watched it anyway. FOMO just confirms around 4%. He's showing off there. He must have a good rank around his rank last week. Oh gosh, hey Oscar. Well, of course, I've seen. Indeed, Oscar's joined us as well. It's very nice of you to join us, Oscar. And we'll give you a shout at FPL Focal as well. If you want to go somewhere with sort of slick music and sort of chilled out backbeat music in the background, the stuff that I can't organize because I don't know how to do it. One day, Focal, you can show me what to do, properly and attract actual humans in here as opposed to us.
I'm sure we'll get Focal loads of new subscribers, won't we? I mean, no one in our
yeah. I tell you what, Focal, when you look at your subs and you're thinking, okay, what is it? 3, 4, 5,000 this week, or I don't know. I have no idea what kind of numbers people will rack up, but the last 1,000, that's probably us sending them your way. Something. Yes, but you're very welcome. Where were we? Yeah. So for me, I think again, I don't think you can ignore the kind of opportunity. I feel like if I had all of these players in my team this week, I don't know how you would own all of them and not captain Palmer in this situation. I know that sounds like an odd statement for some to accept, but I think it's just the opportunity sense. Watkins is one of those players where I'd very happily own. Ultimately for me, I have to pick one and captain them, and it may well be Watkins. But I think if you owned all of these players, I think the opportunity is just there. It'd be hard to ignore. I don't think you could go to deadline and think, oh, he's there and he's right there. I just think you have to do it, don't you? That's how I would feel anyway.
Yeah. But also, we say all the time, you do. If you do have to go with what you feel, because it's about having no regrets. FPL is all about having no regrets. So it's about your process, and so you can't reluctantly captain someone because you think that. Well, I don't think you should anyway. I don't think you should put your faith entirely if you don't believe in, for example, models or numbers or projections or all that sort of stuff. I don't think anyone really would go against that belief. But you do have to back what you actually believe. But to do that, you have to pull yourself away from the bias and all the influence of the content creators and everything online and the big fear. Loads of people are going Watkins because they see everyone else going Watkins, and for example. So yeah, you've got to be objective, but you've also got to be really happy. You've got to have no regrets. You've got to really think about what your process is and what you believe in and what you want to go for. You're not going to go for someone unless you believe in it. So
for some reason, I'm just picturing like the FPL manager is. Do you remember Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
Of course.
Yeah, classic. Obviously, personally, by the way, Raiders of the Lost Ark is the best one.
Oh,
but nevertheless. Okay, I'm glad that you agree with that. I wasn't sure that you would. But where they have to do the test, and ultimately it's like the penitent man will pass. He has to walk across the ledge even though he can't see it, etc. That's what Palmer is this week. He's walking across the kind of invisible ledge to get the Holy Grail. Something along those lines. So perhaps that's the way. If nothing else, I might watch that film now. I feel like I'm in the kind of mood for that. I actually have a story about this. I don't know whether to share it with the actual general public here, but when I was a kid, that's when you're younger, there's someone you kind of want to be or something. And I used to dress up as a kind of mini Indiana Jones.
Super. You had
With
to,
I think apparently that there used to be these things. What is
That's
it?
why
Like hanging plants, like like a rope basket. Apparently, I fashioned it into like a mini whip.
I was going to say, you still like a whip now, don't you?
Let's not go into that. It's too early in the evening. Speaking of which, we've gone on for quite a while as usual, haven't we? We should probably talk about what have we got left? Projected goals and stuff, and then we'll talk through our teams. I don't know that we've got much to add on projected goals and that sort of thing. Do you think these are a fair reflection? Villa out on top, 2.65. Chelsea, 2.45.
I'm sure
City, I think.
It's the Arsenal-Newcastle game I'm struggling with. Like,
same.
What's going to happen there? It's difficult, isn't it? Because Arsenal is such a funny one. It's frustrating because I've got Raya and I've got Saliba. I don't have to play either of them. But it's just a difficult one because you sort of feel like, I don't know, you sort of feel like they're a team that have probably lost their kind of intrinsic motivation. The players are kind of naturally probably on a bit of a downer. They're out of Europe and they've not won the league, right? And you've just got Arteta in the background who's still just a screaming, obsessive menace. Who's not even lost any of his hunger and just wants them to annihilate everyone. And he's shouting in all their ears. You feel like they're running off just Arteta. So I never really know what to. I don't really know what to make of them in terms of thinking what the players' frame of mind is. How badly do they want to win this game? Or they probably pretty badly. No, they've taken a few beatings from Newcastle, haven't they, this season?
They have, yeah, they have. And they've looked, from memory anyway. The last time, I can't remember whether it was a cup game or a league game last time, but they did decidedly look like the team who were going to get bullied and lose that game. So,
Yeah, and then Arsenal were terrible in the first half against Liverpool. I didn't really see the game, or I saw bits of it, and then they were much better in the second half. Rice is back apparently, so that's pretty big.
Okay, you were going to say it. Yeah.
That is. I mean, the two big things are Rice is back. Arsenal are at home, and Isak has not been 100%, and that's a big difference because when we were playing previously, Isak was just uncontrollable, undefendable.
So what I'm hearing here is get Palmer and Watkins, yeah?
You go looking at back-to-back hits, are we? Is that what you're thinking?
No, I don't think so. But would you know what? I would rather have paid for that hit this week than I would now in hindsight, obviously. But you can't win them all. I don't think that would have worked out anyway. But
yeah, so I am. So I've got Sarr, for example, the Wolves keeper, and Raya. And I've got, for example, Saliba and Milenkovic. I've currently got Milenkovic and Livramento on the bench. So I've got Saliba, and I've got Raya over Sarr. But I mean that's really hard to say. I mean, I don't know. Actually, thinking, I just thought this now for the first time. This is just like tiny things because there's just such little tiny margins. But I suppose one thing with Sarr is, even as an Eze owner, I really don't like his penalty technique. He's not very. Don't think he's great.
No, it is. Yeah, it's rubbish. Yeah,
and Sarr's a very good penalty saver. I mean, that's one thing. I suppose I should say that I'm going to look back on this video now and not play Sarr and he's save a penalty. So, what do you think about Sarr versus Raya, for example?
If I'm honest, I don't really expect either to do us any great deal of favours. I suppose I'm sort of swung a tiny amount by the idea that, obviously if Arsenal do clean, we've got two of them. Plenty of people will bench at least one, so there is kind of that sort of block safety. But then of course I'd be playing Isak potentially if I keep him up against those. So it feels like you're going to have to accept losing a little bit because it's just the others. Like usually this week, I think when I looked a bit further back, Milenkovic seemed a bit more appealing to me. But now I don't, even as a West Ham fan, I'm not remotely confident that Forest keep a clean sheet at all.
Mm.
You know, actually, whisper it, but I'm relatively confident that we'll get a result there, which is odd this season to say it. But I think we'll get something from the game. Maybe not win, but I think we'll get something from that game. Can't see Milenkovic keeping a clean sheet. I wouldn't play Livramento. I just can't see myself doing it at any sense. So Sarr and Raya is the only decision, I think. I think honestly it's going to be I don't think either is going to be hauling by any means. At the moment it's Raya though, yeah. I haven't thought about that one enough actually.
Same. I'm just kind of going pretty much with the odds at the moment for all of them. So yeah. Double
but then it begs the question. I mean, I for example will still have Sarr, whatever the cost. So, you know, is there a world where you play the extra Crystal Palace attacker over Isak? You know, that sounds like a very odd. I don't know. Gut instinct is I never do that kind of thing. But
just looking at that as well, Brighton's numbers are quite high there, aren't they? They've obviously, I mean, as you expect, it's probably factored in that Liverpool slightly beached, but 1.7 against Liverpool is pretty high, isn't
it? Yeah. You might take the risk actually.
Well, that's what I mean. At the moment, I've got João Pedro. The only reason, if I knew João Pedro was definitely going to start,
yeah, you play him. Yeah,
I'd probably play him, or I may well play him. It's just that you just never really know with João Pedro. It's a little bit like Cunha. I kind of want to see him start one first, you know, because they've been playing well without him basically, and he got sent off. Was that the first time or the second time he's been sent off this season at least? So, yeah, it's yeah. I mean, Bournemouth looks a little not low, but there's a big disparity there between City and Bournemouth. I think that's going to be pretty tight, that game. Pretty close at least. Yeah,
I don't think that's as clear as it shows. Yeah. What is it, by the way? Is it 1.1 something? I can't actually see it on my screen.
1.1
for reasons I won't bore anyone with. 1.13. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Apart from that, yeah, a lot of people talking about Vardy this week, which is I do quite like. I mean, it's a good fixture, isn't it? And he has been playing out. He's got me in my draft team, and he's been doing the business. I mean, I think anyway. I've not actually remembered to check my draft team much recently, but yeah. No, I think that's it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll move on to teams because inevitably some of these conversations will probably continue a bit. Who's first up? Oh, it's me. Oh God. All right. I'm just seeing if there was anything. There are quite a few questions tonight, so I will come back to them probably at the end. I think I've sort of starred as many as I could, but just shout again. It's not like, you know, Ask James or something like this where he gets about 7 gazillion comments. You know, if you can type yours twice if you want, frankly, and that would be absolutely fine. You have got a better chance of me reading it. So, but I'll try and go back.
This is why I've just been rambling, because I can tell looking at you that you're not listening to a word I'm saying. You're just like replying to the chat and stuff and doing what you probably should be doing.
This is why I praised our good friend Andy Mode, who kindly lost to me in one of my draft leagues this week. So I celebrated a victory in that league. So I've sewn that one up already. So this season isn't a waste. I've won a 14-man draft league. So I'm very happy about that. Grey head and all those types. Anyway, my point was hosting. He's very good at hosting, and he shows people like me how to do it, and I do a bad impression. So yeah, team this week. Actually, do you know what? I was quite nervous is the wrong word, but I've been apprehensive about coming on this week because, you know, I thought I should have a clear kind of lean or position or something. And earlier this week, honestly, I think I had about 4 different things I was considering doing, but it's very much down to 2 now, at absolute most. So as I say, I don't feel comfortable about captaining Salah anymore. Although, to be honest with you, again, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he ends up being the top scorer this week. It is one of those ones. It's quite plausible. It's just unfortunately the evidence doesn't stack up in front of you at the moment, does it? The team as it stands that's what it's going to be in terms of the the bench will sit as it is. I don't think there's much likelihood of that changing. Sarr's a funny one because, again, I can see. I mean, I think he plays and gets reasonable minutes on what is it, Tuesday as well. So I can see the logic of people who don't mind starting him. But of course, it is going to be a lightly disrupted lineup on some level. You'd expect to see, I don't know, what is it, your Ben Chilwells and a Nathaniel Klein and a Defeni or something like this, even if it is a pretty strong team. So I can see the logic there. But nevertheless, I can't really see me doing that. So I'm going to be playing Isak if I keep him over Sarr. I did contemplate for a little while. I can do Cunha to Watkins. I'm not going to do that for reasons that I've explained earlier on. And I understand why other people would. That's absolutely fine. It just doesn't sit quite right with me. So really, the choices are captaincy related. I was initially going to roll, and I was quite happy with it. But bit of a spoiler, but because there is an SKLW fixture this week, there's a little bit of impetus to be like, I want to make sure this team is as strong as possible for that final. So I will be getting a captain in likely because I want a bloody trophy. I've been managing the son of a gun for like 4 or more years. Bashing away, herding cats or whatever it is that we do. So I know that doesn't matter to anyone else, but it matters to me. Yeah, so essentially it's Isak to Watkins or De Bruyne to Palmer. And now it's interesting with the De Bruyne one because almost everyone I've seen comment on this is very, very bullish that he's going to play good minutes. That it's absolutely not without question. His face is on the program, all that stuff, which, word of the wise, marketing broadly don't speak to the manager to figure that out. So just to want to throw that one out there right now. So it's between those two. As I say, if I had both in my team, then I think I would edge a little bit towards Palmer. In terms of where it leaves me for the last week, so I think I've got 2 million in the bank. Yeah, 1.9. So if you went Isak to Watkins, you have the money next week for De Bruyne to Saka, if you want that, or Sarr to Cliver, Cunha to some, Evan Nelson, whatever it might be, Wissa to Evan Nelson. So there's a few things that I can do there. If I went De Bruyne, I've still got the option of bringing Saka in the following week. I'd probably have to play Eze at Liverpool, which, as I say, I don't mind as much as other people. Or I just use the move for a Bournemouth player, most likely. Or a small chance of Bowen as well. Because, it'll be last day and will I care? I don't know. I'm not sure yet. So there's that. I think I've ruled out... I think General is a good example of this. I'm pretty sure he's just keeping his... I think he might have De Bruyne and Isak, and he's just going to add Rodgers instead, and he's happy with his captain. I think that's what a few people have done as well. I think I've ruled that one out just because I don't think it helps for again reasons that I've talked about earlier on. But yeah.
So, but you'll have to play as a regardless, which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying, but you'll have to play.
Not necessarily. So what would happen in?
Yes, sorry, I see what you mean. So you're saying you could go for a Bournemouth? No, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So whatever move I do this week, if I decided to use the Palmer / De Bruyne spot to Saka, for example, then obviously I'm kind of one strong fixture down, and I would play Eze. And the rest of them, of course. But if I went for, say, Palmer and forgo Saka, then I could go to a Bournemouth player somewhere.
Yeah, that's what you mean, but and not have Saka. Yeah, okay,
yeah. Sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah. I mean, that's not as clear as people think yet, because of course we don't really know what momentum or interest they'll have. But that's a conversation for next week, isn't it? Really, but I definitely want the option to have that. I don't want to rule it out, but I don't think there's anything I can do that would rule it out. So yeah, any thoughts? I suppose not really, because it's ultimately the captain, isn't it?
Well, if it was my team, I know what I would do, but I must say that, and I'm not very good at being careful about these things, or being, I'm pretty kind of black and white.
No, I don't think you need to. We've known each other long enough by now. You can just say what you think. It's fine.
No, but you know what? Sometimes it's annoying, isn't it? When someone, I don't mean to say it as if it's like an obvious choice. It isn't. It's just that that's the way my mind is set up in terms of perceiving it and what I would do, because I've already been thinking about that. And I've told you about the opportunity. And also, as you know, I don't like De Bruyne as a pick. I think it's kind of fascinating to me, really. It's amazing. I say this now, I'm sure he'll bang this weekend, whatever. But it's been years. Every single year, everyone seems to have this kind of, amnesia about the fact that De Bruyne has never been a good pick, and then everyone's sort of terrified of him. Oh, you've got to get De Bruyne. We've got to get De Bruyne for it. You can't have no Man City attack. Yes, you can, because they're not.
Your
Man City attack. Haaland's good, and the rest of them aren't. De Bruyne has never been a good pick. He's okay. He's fine. Sometimes he can get some points, but I mean, what we're doing here.
Yeah. Okay, Wayne Robinson. He absolutely hates your comment there, and it's a very impressive. What looks like a very impressive pizza there, Wayne. Would rather have KDB than Palm. I can see why that would look the case to people this week. I mean, obviously on paper the fixture looks similar-ish, I suppose. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because I think I'm somewhere between the two. I think in the situation I was faced in when I bought him, I'm not that annoyed with myself for bringing in someone like De Bruyne, other than the fact that long term I hate those kind of picks because I wasn't sure about the minutes. But it's really but at this point in time when I have to make a tight decision, it's about captaincy, right? And I don't think, realistically De Bruyne is not as good as Saka or Palmer. Basically, that's the only decision I need to make. I don't want to overcomplicate it. And in the final week, I would sell him anyway. So that's why it's a consideration.
Palmer
is X a little bit of an awkward one, isn't it? Because ultimately, there's no way you're going to be bringing him back. Obviously, I think no one's going to do that if they sell him. So it's so is that as well. I mean, just very quickly on this, because we have to talk about it a bit, because everyone. Well, sorry, I say everyone. Lots of pods would say this. Last game narrative, KDB. Any thoughts?
Not really. I'm sure he'll start. I think he'll start.
Slightly, yeah.
I'm sure he'll be motivated. I mean, sometimes it's going to be very overwhelming for him. You're going to be very upset, like you would be. Can you imagine? It's just like such a devastating thing for a footballer when you realise you're at the end of your game and you're not going to be that player that you were anymore, and you're not going to see that stadium anymore, and it must be so difficult. Just kind of side note, but yeah, I mean, of course, it could be good, but it is narrative. It is just building narrative out of something that could just go either way. I think you should be pretty confident about his minutes, pretty confident about him starting. He could easily come off early, either because he's played the cup final, or because he wants to give him an ovation, or because who knows. I mean, but Bournemouth is a tough fixture. It's a tough fixture.
Don't say that, JC. Jesus, it's a hard enough decision this week without all of
that. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, maybe they do let him take. He's never been a player he doesn't like taking penalties, because he knows he's not very good at them. He's one of those sort of guys who prefers being the underdog. He does brilliant stuff when you don't expect it. I don't think he likes taking penalties, and I don't think he's very good at them at all. So he takes every opportunity to not take one. He might. I doubt it. I don't know. Haaland's going to want to take one, isn't he? Yeah, I just it's enough of a rid myself of that narrative. I remember going down the David Silva last home game narrative. That didn't go well a few years ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, it's just biggest opportunity of the week is Palmer, isn't it? And I don't like De Bruyne. I mean, the other thing to say on Palmer is, oh, there we go. Again, second.
Serious sirens back here. I apologise.
Yeah.
This is what you're in.
Those ones.
It's basically like watching an early season of The Wire, or some kind of cop drama. The gritty streets of southwest London. It's all kicking off here.
Just Palmer as well. Like I still quite like him for 38 as well. I'm not hugely bothered about Saka. I might go to Saka, but again, that's one of those things. I'll probably just go for whatever makes the most sense for my team in terms of a weakness, in terms of getting someone strong in, whether it's a Bournemouth person or not. But I'm not worried about Palmer's minutes in 38 because despite them being in this cup final, the league, this league game's really important. Chelsea have got to win both games, haven't they? And Forest away isn't the best fixture, but they've not been good defensively at all, have they? So I don't mind that. I don't mind that at all in 38. So I may well just keep Palmer in 38. I don't know if you were just saying you were definitely going to sell him either way, but I think just as an additional point is that I also think he's still very good in 38, and it's not a problem if you're just going to skip Saka. Like, yeah, you're skipping Saka, but you've got Cole Palmer.
No. All I would say is that at the moment in time, I just want the route. I want the option, and I'll maintain that whatever happens. So,
yeah, you get that either way.
I think to tell you the truth, it's as much about Salah as anything else, isn't it? You know, if there's a sense that you're confident enough to captain him that week, then it does have a knock-on effect to the Salah pick as well. Sorry, Saka pick as well. So yeah, in conclusion, it is a straight shootout between the captains and whoever I'm more confident on. At the moment, I think the opportunity is more in the midfield, but I appreciate that a lot of people will disagree with that. But what I will say is that also there is that injury narrative with Isak. If we did hear something particularly obvious from an official source, then that does change things. And you know, I do like it. And also I can see why people, if they had a couple of moves, might decide to do that this week as well. I don't think there are many, but there you go. Okay, we haven't got too long left really because we're running a bit late. But let's see your team, and then we'll answer a few questions.
Yeah, not much more to say. Just to say on Isak, you know, I lean towards thinking they probably still need some kind of result in the last week, and putting yourself forward in that position. You're going to feel good about having Isak at home to Everton in 38, I think. Just an additional thing to think about. Sometimes you have to just properly put yourself in next week, don't you? To think about, imagine yourself looking at your team and what you're comfortable with. But yeah, unless there's something to say or anything in the chat. This is my team, and this is why I personally am going for Palmer. As I say, I've got Triple Palace. Palace have been great. They could continue to be really good. I think Sarr will play. I think Eze will play the next game, but we don't really know what that's going to look like. And then they've got Liverpool away. I think it's too much to take those three in. I've got João Pedro, but I quite like that. I could even be playing him this week, but I need to think about what the team news is going to look like and what the predictions are going to look like. When he's been out for a spell, I'm never really confident he's going to come back and play.
Yeah, same. That's actually one of the reasons why I did the Cunha move last week. Yeah.
And so if he does play, which I expect him to, and hopefully he plays well, then I get him with Tottenham in 38, which would be really nice because no one will own him. I mean, I'll have quite a differential team in 38. I mean, it's you can view that as being worrying or just an opportunity. I mean, I'm just outside top 1K, and I could still finish, way outside that. I could finish way down. I could finish way up. I've got quite a few sort of differentials. But yeah, I quite like João Pedro versus Spurs. I mean, Spurs obviously are so leaky, but they're also really clumsy, aren't they, at the back? And they seem to give away a lot of penalties. Brighton win a lot of penalties, and João Pedro's incredible at penalties. So quite like that in 38. Obviously, I like Rodgers this week. I also like Rodgers in 38. 38 is going to be interesting for me because he plays United, which is probably a pretty good fixture as well. Eze's on penalties against Liverpool, might have a decision there because I might sell one of those for like a Bournemouth midfielder in 38 and go 3-4-3. If you see what I mean. So that might be Rodgers. Yeah. That might be selling Eze and Rodgers on the bench, if for example. So yeah, I can afford to do Sarr to Palmer. To be honest, it could be a bit of a coin flip between those two guys anyway. A lot of people have to do Eze to Palmer because they can't afford Sarr to Palmer, and that could work out well. So that's just what I like the look of in terms of my team holistically, and as I say, the process. That's my route of no regrets. That's my route of comfort. So what will be will be. I mean, I'm bothered because I'm bothered about rank and I'm bothered about FPL, but I'm also not bothered in the sense that that's just logical for me, and I'm perfectly rest easy with that, and it is what it is. But it just also happens to also be a bit of an opportunity. So hopefully something comes off. But yeah, Sarr to Palmer captain, and a pretty good squad there. with one free transfer in 38. So hopefully things, Livramento's decent for 38, isn't he, with Everton at home? So then I can bench Munoz, double Arsenal defence against Southampton, and Vardiol. So yeah, any thoughts or?
No, I think realistically we've probably gassed it out throughout the pod, to tell you the truth. But I think no, it's very wise. I actually really like the idea of holding Zhao to the last day. I think that could be really handy. You wouldn't be surprised at all if that was a real difference maker on the last week, potentially. Of course, it could go the other way. He might not start and all the rest of it, but we should know by next week. And if it's a problem next week, then you can him anyway, right? So. Yeah, in some ways I'm envious because I have to keep Wissa now anyway, right? There's almost nothing I can do there. Is which is fine, he's good and all, but
he's great.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of questions. I will try. Some of them are from ages ago. I will whip through as many as I can in about 5 minutes, and then we'll call it a night because you got other things to do, I'm sure. Is it treat these as kind of like immediate style answers if we can.
Okay.
Is it a Villa mid or Bowen for Sarr? So someone's bringing it. I am 74 bringing in a Villa mid or Bowen for Sarr. I mean Bowen, obviously.
Bowen, I suppose. Yeah, it is, to be honest. I mean, it's hard to know what to think of the Villa mids. Do like Rodgers a lot, but it would have to be Bowen for me. It would have to be Bowen for me. Ipswich away in 38 as well.
So I'm just trying to clear the ones that actually aren't questions that I've starred here. Oh yeah, assistant manager. I have Matt Bugsby. He's still on that. Of course he is. I have to choose one of Potter or Hertzler. That's interesting. I mean, with West Ham, you can potentially hold them next week, right? I suppose with Brighton you can actually. Both are table bonus games this week, aren't they, for Hertzler and Potter? Yeah, that's interesting.
That is interesting, actually. That is interesting. I think immediate gut says Hertzler just. I think I can.
Yeah. Do you know what?
I think Brighton winning slightly more than I can see. Yeah, I can see Brighton winning slightly more than I can see West Ham winning.
Well, I think it's worth it. Yeah, it's worth it. Plus, surely hardly anyone's going to have him. Yeah?
38 looks a lot better to me though. There, I think again that looks. I mean, Spurs are such a mess that I really do fancy Brighton to win that game, especially if they still need to. Whereas actually Ipswich away for a team like West Ham is not. It's a good fixture, but it's not a walkover. It's not going to be an easy game. Ipswich's last game in the Premier League. I think I slightly prefer the Brighton fixture for 38, so that would probably lean me that way with terms of the two table bonus options.
Sorry, I forgot that I can actually put these on screen. Heather, bench Alanga, Cunha, or Wissa?
Yeah, and it's fair enough. I mean, like I said, I answered this to Heather before in the chat, and I said that I would bench Alanga, but I mean, a lot of people might disagree with that, but I don't mind sometimes taking a little bit of a risk on. I mean, I am very much a minutes manager, and players who play and all that sort of stuff. But I think Cunha will start, and that might be wrong. There's certainly a risk of his minutes there. But when it's a play like that, who's such a talisman, penalties, and etc., I'd be more comfortable benching Elanga.
Is Isak going to blank? I think we kind of covered. I mean,
we've done that.
We are in that conundrum ourselves, Stephen.
Is he going? Probably.
But you're going to play him anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the other thing is we saw it from Howe this week against Chelsea. I know that like Baker talked about an above average, and he said to me in the chat on the day, he was like, he's the best matchup manager he's ever seen, kind of thing. And it's it's a fair shout, and it's an interesting shout. And I did like his shout also about that reason for Howe's England manager for these kind of individual matches, because it is amazing how often he pulls this sort of things out. He just knows how to match up against the team and just manages to pull these amazing performances out and find a way to kind of score goals or find weaknesses. it's a little bit weird because he's sort of already dominated Arsenal this season. So is it Arteta's turn to figure out, does the other one evolve and find a way to do something different? But you know, bet against Howe and Newcastle at your peril, basically.
Just a few more. Would you keep Marino and sell Sarr this week, or vice versa? For 38. Oh, right. Is he even available?
I was just about to ask
Did he
you
get
that.
off?
I was just about to ask you that. I like Marino for 38. I like him generally because he's pretty, you know, he's a good player and he's low owned. So, but I don't think he's available. No, he's suspended, so he's only available for 38. All right, I see. I mean, yeah. I mean, if you can bench him easily, bench him.
Yeah. Maybe the last one. Could you suggest any Everton assets outside defenders and Neto?
Beto presumably means actually.
I was going to say, I was like, Neto. Is that's? Mind you, of course, some people are going to Neto this week, but obviously the other one, the Chelsea one. I mean, no, would be my thought. I don't think it's worthwhile particularly. Although it's one of those things, isn't it? It feels like if you get unbelievably lucky, you know, Dwight McNeil is one of these guys who could easily just pull out a random. So if you're properly, I don't care anymore, then
yeah, I was just looking because I don't know why. I don't know why he didn't. It must be a fitness thing, but he didn't start the last game, he did start the game before, unless he came off early. I didn't see that, but he's obviously got returns in both last games, and yeah, McNeil still makes me laugh because I don't know if you remember. It's the actual, although it didn't mean anything in terms of major repercussions. It's still the single moment that was my most single moment of anger and annoyance this season was Dwight McNeil at the start of the season.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I just really had a good feeling about him that week.
It's been a long season.
I went on above average that week, didn't I? And I was just singing Dwight McNeil's praises, and I was definitely going in that week. And then for whatever reason, changed to Semenyo, and I was just driving. I went to see my mum to visit my mum. Missed all the football because you can't get my phone out when I go and see my mum because she gets upset, and I just missed it all. Got in the car, put the radio on, and McNeil scored. I can't remember if it was his first or his second. You know, he scored his second, and I was just like, I think I had to pull over. You know, I had to pull over for a second and just be like, just take a breather. But anyway, yeah. So I won't bore you with that. But it's still the moment of this season. But yeah, McNeil's the one. If you think he's definitely going to start, I've not looked into the team news, so follow Neil. Check the updates. If you think McNeil's going to start and he looks like starting, that's fun for Southampton at home. Yeah.
Yep. Big up Neil. We were, you know, he's the source of truth. He's the secret algorithm. Go to Neil. On Fantasy Football Scout, of course, if you don't know what we're talking about. I should probably have not left it to 2 hours and 2 minutes in. But of course, if you are still here and you're a human, or if you're not, to be honest with you, feel free to like, share, subscribe, etc. I should probably have done that 2 hours ago.
Yeah, everyone's left now, haven't they?
Yeah. But yeah, anyway, thank you very much for if you did carry the can this long. That's an incredible achievement. You know, you could have watched the Indiana Jones film that I talked about.
Yeah, when I do the thumbnails, not thumbnails. When I do the timestamps, I can just pretend there's something really important to watch at this point, and because people skip this 2 hours anyway, don't they? They just go to. I was amazed at the timestamps. People really appreciate them. I've been listening to pods, like, you know, for what, 5, 6, 7 years every week, and I've never used timestamps. I just put them on and listen to them anyway. So apparently people like them.
And I promise you, we will figure this Spotify thing out one day. Look, I just tired and busy and stupid, and one of our friends who does another podcast will tell me what to do. You know, actually, Oscar's probably a good guy to ask. Maybe is he in that world? Maybe. Anyway, we'll figure that out at some point. But they will be there. YouTube screwed me over, and I don't know what to do anymore. But I will fix it along with all things over the summer. Good. Okay. Right. Oh, well, I wish everyone fair. Remember, early deadline this week, so don't be one of those people who regrets the entire weekend as a result of, basically tell your boss that you have to leave early, and that sort of thing. Very important. Any last words, Danny?
No, just cheers for joining us. Been good in the chat and stuff. So we'll be on time.
Yeah. Thank you for keeping us company. It does actually help, and also, if you couldn't listen to it all live and you want to go to the sort of proper on YouTube chat and say something there, please do, because actually that's quite helpful. We hadn't realised that was important, but feel free to say something there as well. And nice to see a few friendly faces and new people as well. I probably have seen them before, but it's nice to see JC here and Joseph Robinson and Wayne Robinson. Any relation? Joseph Robinson and Wayne Robinson. They're probably in different rooms and didn't know it. This is incredible. Well, you guys should get together, just to check. You may know each other rather better than you thought. Okay, great. Well, enjoy your week, everybody, and we'll look forward to seeing you. There are a couple more left, so we'll do one last week and then probably some sort of post-mortem-y thing where, we drink more than normal and,
Definitely.
wear hats or something.
Definitely.
Great. Okay, have a good one.
Nice one.